Hi folks, welcome to our next point on the tour. So I'm sitting in front of another unique part of Centennial Park. This is the cairn, or the pile of stones that we can see here, the stone structure behind me, that is to commemorate Busby's Bore. So you would have heard about Busby's Bore at the end of last week's tour at the tank stream, where Paul finished off in Hyde Park at Busby's Bore Fountain. This is probably one of the most meaningful parts of the tour here, and the swamps that we're going to be looking at a little bit later as well. This marker here, which is quite inconspicuous in the park, it's just at the entrance at the Robertson Road gates. You probably have driven past if you've entered in the park this way, and maybe you've never even noticed it here. But this point here marks the point where the water came from Lachlan Swamps and would enter into Hyde Park and to supply Sydney's drinking water, the second drinking water supply source. Before Busby's Bore was built though, this area was, as I mentioned, this kind of sandy, swampy heathland area. But when Governor Macquarie came to the area and he saw this area, he thought this part of Sydney is close to Sydney, it's only 4 kilometres from the CBD. This can be really useful for increasing the amount of grazing land around Sydney. So up until that point, Sydney's first commons, or common ground area, was in Hyde Park. Once Hyde Park started to get kind of more urbanised and have a greater kind of, the city started to develop around it, Macquarie needed another place for grazing and common use to happen. So he looked to the area at Lachlan Swamps a little bit further south and east, and he declared this area in 1811 Sydney Common. And this area here was fenced off and used for grazing, for cattle and other range of livestock. And it was used as a place for people to come and essentially to use for whatever. So it was based on this English style of commons in the kind of environmental management, I guess you could call it, back then. So after 1811, this is when the tank stream was still being used as a drinking water supply. 1824, fast forward to then, and there was a push at this time by Governor Darling, who said the tank stream is being polluted, we need another drinking water supply. So he commissioned, at the time, the general surveyor and engineer, John Busby, Thomas Busby is his son, John Busby, to find a place around Sydney to get drinking water supply. Busby looked at Lachlan Swamps and he looked at the commons and he said, this is a perfect part of Sydney for us to be drawing our water from. And so he set about in 1827 to create what would be Busby's Bore. So he constructed a roughly 5 kilometre long tunnel through the sandstone. Now, importantly, it wasn't Busby himself who did the carving. Busby was the commissioner. He designed the tunnel, he was the engineer behind the project. What Busby did was, at the time, there was a lot of convict labour that was being able to use for infrastructure projects like Busby's Bore. So a team of unskilled convict labourers would chisel their way through the sandstone underground between here and Centennial Park, basically across between Moore Park and the SCG, down up towards Taylor Square, and then from there it would go down Oxford Street to Hyde Park through the sandstone. This obviously was a massive undertaking, a huge kind of public infrastructure project at the time. It ended up taking 10 years to build this bore through the sandstone, partly because of the unskilled labour, as Busby would refer to the convict labourers as constantly, but also the fact that Busby himself never actually went down to the bore to inspect the bore himself. He was actually kind of, anecdotally said to be afraid of the bore, afraid of going down into those spaces. So without having the engineer to inspect the bore itself, unskilled labourers, these convict labourers, weren't really keeping up to the standards that was expected of them. And so the bore ended up taking a lot longer. In the end, the bore was decommissioned only a few years later, probably about a decade or so later. And instead, the next raft of Sydney's drinking water supply systems took place from the Nepean system, irrigation system that would occur in southwestern and western Sydney. But this is the second drinking water supply for Sydney, and we can see the dams that were created to kind of facilitate and foster what was hoped to be a reliable drinking water source, still present today in the ponds. And we can get clues as to this, for example, in the name of the largest pond in the area here in the park, Busby's Pond, which we'll be having a quick little look at next, and just to show you around the area there. So we'll head over to the pond and we'll have a look around at the parkland's next history phase.